The Prelude in E minor, opus 28 number 4, is probably one of Chopin's most well-known compositions. Its rather tragic character and ambiguous sounding harmony make it a very atmospheric piece, yet it is not terribly difficult to play. The stream of chords played in a steady eighth note rhythm in the left hand is constantly descending, usually in a pattern where one or two notes stay while the other one or other ones move. Very often chromaticism is used as a means to add harmonic tension. This is already a basic analysis of how the harmony works in this prelude, but I wanted to go further than that and find out the harmonic function of each chord within the piece's key of E minor. I played this piece years ago in my piano lesson, when I was maybe 12 years old or so, and struggled to get the right notes on the keyboard as I was, and actually still am to be honest, to put it gently, not the fastest reader. So my teacher, who was a jazz pianist, wrote chord symbols underneath the left hand, and somehow once each chord had a name, I could read the music a lot better. So for this video I wanted to build upon this approach and see if I could make a complete analysis of the prelude from a jazz point of view, by assigning a chord symbol and a Roman numeral to each chord, and see if jazz theory was applicable. Let's dive right in. Hello viewers! Welcome to Andynalysis. Opus 28 number 4 is a rather short piece with a length of only 25 bars. The tempo indication is largo. It can be divided into two parts of basically the same length that I'm going to call A and B, though from a musical point of view they could also be called A1 and A2, as the second part starts off exactly like the first but then quickly takes a different turn. Chopin frequently makes use of chord inversions that are a key ingredient to the piece's lofty, contemplating character. Diminished chords are often used, functioning either as secondary dominants or passing chords. Suspense is created by means of tension release and dark versus bright. Listen for example to this small section where this becomes evident. As I already pointed out in the introduction, one of the main composition tools to reach this kind of harmonic tension is the frequent use of chromatically descending lines. And quite often the resulting chords are hard to pinpoint and give the sense of tonal ambiguity. Throughout the piece I found several what I'm going to call harmonic anchor points. The first of course being E minor in bar 1, then A minor in bar 9, again E minor in bar 13, B7 in bar 17, and obviously E minor again on the final cadence in bar 25. Imagine the prelude as a bridge, and these chords, which happen to be the fundamental harmonic degrees 1, 4 and 5, tonic, subdominant and dominant, as the bridge's piers. The arches symbolize the harmonic development from one metaphorical pier to the next. Let's see how exactly Chopin did this. First of all, here are all the chord symbols. Note that I included the notes of the melody in the right hand into the chord symbols, as these notes obviously sound together with the left hand, and therefore have to be analyzed as one vertical sound. The first chord of the piece is the tonic, E minor, in first inversion. The inversion gives the chord a lofty and floating character that perfectly sets the mood for the entire piece. In bar 2, we find the first instance of the top voice of the left hand descending chromatically. In fact, this line keeps descending throughout the entire first part of the piece, from E4 in bar 1, all the way down to A3 in bar 12, all the while staying, with just one exception, entirely chromatic. The E flat could be seen as an indicator that Chopin indeed mainly focused on the chromatic line. However, analyzing the full chord, I interpreted the E flat enharmonically as D sharp, making it the third of B7. From a jazz point of view, this would be a 2 minor 7 5 7 progression, or a 2-5 as it is more commonly referred to, albeit with the bass note F sharp staying throughout the whole bar. The lowest note also keeps moving downward chromatically, landing on an F natural in the next bar. I must admit that I struggled a bit to find a good explanation on how the harmony works in this bar. The best I could come up with is that in the key of E, F7 is what in jazz we would call a substitute 5/7, so an alternative dominant chord if you will, that is a tritone higher or lower than the original dominant chord, in this case B7. I actually explained the concept of tritone substitution more thoroughly in another video of mine, so I will not go into detail here. The chord that I called F6 flat 5 could probably be called a sixth ajouté, as it can also be interpreted as a D minor chord in first inversion. The F minor 6 generally functions like a passing diminished chord. Whatever way we name the chords and analyze their function, what mainly happens in this bar is that the upcoming E7 in bar 4 is gradually approached chromatically. To save some time, I will not mention the chromatic movement in every bar anymore from now on. Now, E7 is the secondary dominant to A minor, which it kind of leads to in the next bar, but not quite yet, and there's a reason for that. E7 is followed by E minor 7, again the jazz version of the minor chord if you will, and E diminished 7, a passing diminished chord to the upcoming C6. So bar 4 is essentially a sequence of bar 3, a half tone lower. C6 could be seen as an inversion of A minor 7, so in a way, like I said, the E7 from the previous bar does indeed resolve to A minor. However, the C triad in the left hand makes this bar sound more like C major than A minor. Plus, A minor is going to be the next harmonic target a few bars down the road, where the melody will also develop for the first time. So it's pretty safe to say that Chopin intentionally didn't write a proper A minor chord just yet. Bars 5 and 6 can be seen as following the same pattern as each of the two bars before, but stretched. Then in bars 7 and 8 it gets really interesting. I mentioned before, and it already showed in my analysis of bar 5, that the harmony can be, and is likely purposefully created to be, ambiguous in this piece. So in fact I came up with two different analyses. I mean two different ways of analyzing the upcoming cadence. As I already mentioned, our target will be A minor on beat 2 in bar 9. This is the moment where the melody develops, and coincidentally, totally not coincidence I'm sure, it's an A minor chord in first inversion, just like the E minor in the beginning. The chord on the first beat could be interpreted as a C major chord. So in my first version, I'm analyzing the D7 in bar 7 as the double dominant of C major. D minor 6 and D diminished 7 can be seen as a rootless G9 and G7 flat 9 respectively. So this would be a chain of dominant chords going from D7 to G7 to C major 7, with an interpolated 2 minor 7 in between. This analysis makes sense if we focus on the target note C on beat 1 of bar 9. However, it misinterprets the function of the chord that I labeled C major 7 sharp 5. In fact, the notes of the top three voices, including the right hand, are E, B and G sharp, so an E major chord. E major is of course the dominant to A minor being in first inversion here with the bass note C. So this E major over C, as it should correctly be called, has the function of a 5/1 chord, meaning the left hand already arrived on the target, while the right hand is still on the dominant, one step behind so to speak. So bars 7 and 8 should rather be analyzed in relation to A minor, not C major. And what is really handy for us in order to change that is that A minor and C major are a minor third apart. Now, which type of chord do we know that consists entirely of minor thirds and due to this symmetric structure can function in relation to not only one, but in fact 4 different harmonic targets? That's right, diminished seventh chords. So the D diminished 7 that I interpreted as a rootless G7 before would in fact be a rootless E7, with the E chord hanging over to bar 9 if you will. And interestingly, D minor 6 can also be looked at from a different angle, namely as an inversion of B minor 7 flat 5. So my jazz ears hear this progression as a minor 2-5 to A minor, so B half diminished, E7, A minor. Still, as I already pointed out, ambiguity is purposefully used in this composition, so there are valid points in both interpretations. In the following bars, the harmony alternates between A minor 6 and B7, so it's going back and forth between the subdominant and the dominant, a clear indicator that the first section is coming to an end. To say it in a less academic way, this going back and forth between the two chords feels like the harmony is almost about to decide where to land, and then finally settles on B7 in bar 12 that will lead us back to E minor. So this was the first half of the piece. In bar 13 it starts over, but takes a different turn and rather quickly builds towards its climax in bar 17. Bar 13 is exactly the same as bar 1. Bar 14 starts off the same way as bar 2, with F sharp minor, but then immediately goes to F7 on B3, making this, again in jazz terms, a 2 sub 5 progression, compared to the regular 2-5 in bar 2. In the usual chromatically descending fashion, the harmony lands on E7 on beat 3 of bar 15. This movement is continued in the next bar, going to E minor, then E diminished 7 and C sharp diminished 7, which are the same chord in a different inversion, which is why I labeled them both as passing diminished, leading to Chopin's favorite sixth ajouté chord again, which in turn lands on B7 in bar 17. The fact that the chords change on every quarter note of this bar really raises the level of intensity and is a great tool to prepare the upcoming climax. You can think of it as something like a harmonic crescendo that works together with the written dynamic crescendo. 5-7 is of course the chord of choice for a climactic passage, as it naturally creates a lot of harmonic tension that wants to be resolved. Adding the ninth as an additional dissonance, like Chopin did here, makes the effect even stronger. Note that I wrote implied 5 pedal. Due to the technical limitations on the piano, the B is only played as an 8th note, but sustained with a sustain pedal, and as such functions as a pedal point throughout the entire bar. I would especially like to point out the chord on beat 3, which I called E minor major 7. Stand alone, this chord should later become one of these sounds most associated with swing music. Think for instance of the Pink Panther theme. Here of course the chord functions as a suspension that is resolved on the next beat, in a very similar fashion as the chord on beat 1 in bar 9. From bars 18 to 20, we have the going back and forth between A minor and B again, the same idea as in bars 10 to 12. And you'd almost be convinced that the harmony would finally land on E minor after this. But Chopin has even one more ace up his sleeve, and hits us with a deceptive cadence. Instead of quote-unquote correctly resolving to the tonic E minor, he instead goes to the 6th degree, C major. From the C7 2 beats later, he starts a final descending line from B flat all the way down to the E in the last bar. The harmony goes through A minor, B sus, E major, E minor, again C7, the classical augmented 6th chord, in its typical role as a predominant, and a final B sus, B, E minor cadence at the end. These last 5 bars are the cherry on the top of the figurative cake that is this prelude, and they underline the effect of constantly keeping the listener in suspense until the very final moment of the piece. So this was my jazz analysis of the prelude in E minor. Making this helped me a lot in my little quest of finding out how classical harmony influenced jazz harmony. However, the more videos I make with this goal in mind, the more I notice that there isn't a real answer to questions like who used which kind of harmony first, or is that still classical or is it already jazz? And even more importantly, I find that it's not actually that important as long as the music sounds beautiful and I can learn how to use these sounds in my own compositions. I will likely keep my jazz analysis approach for future videos, as that is the way that I'm most familiar with, but I think I will not put such a big importance on who invented which kind of harmony. You should never say never though, so who knows. If you liked this video and would like to see more, please consider leaving a like and maybe even a comment, and subscribing to the channel. Making these videos takes a ton of work, so it means a lot to me if I can see that they actually reach somebody. If you made it until here, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you all on the next. Bye!